Most of my life I've wondered about how society was formed. Spent the last 50 years or so really trying to understand what I could, and I've learned a lot recently and that surprised me. So I wanted to talk about eugenics. It was introduced to me in my 20s was as this outdated ideology that came and went. What I've learned is that it has really impacted society in a long-standing way. And that includes how our identities have been formed, how we're perceived. So what is eugenics? So the National Institute of Health in the United States defines eugenics as an immoral and pseudoscientific theory that claims it is possible to perfect people and groups through the genetic and scientific laws of inheritance. And ultimately that means that you may have heard the term nature versus nurture. And in this belief system, the premise is that everything about a person comes from their biology and their ancestry, as opposed to their environment. The term was spearheaded by Francis Galton in the 1800s, and he took the term eugenics, meaning of good birth or good stock. Like, who is this guy? So Francis Galton, who's pictured here as a younger man, he was born in 1822 in England. He was of high class, was educated, came from a family with money. Clearly, he was a distant younger cousin to Charles Darwin. He was really fascinated by men of notability, right? And how that came about. He published a book in the 1800s called Hereditary Genius: An Inquiry into Its Laws and Consequences, stating that all human traits came through genetics. And because of this, he recommended that people who were inherently superior should marry each other and breed, ultimately. And this reinforced ideas of racism, classism, sexism, and the other existing hierarchies. So what surprised me is how he justified this belief through what he called scientific research. And he looked at a book you can see on the Internet Archive for yourself. And it's truly a book of information with the names of people who founded ideas and came up with belief systems. So he took this book and went through it, which is over 1,200 pages long, then looked at a book called Men of the Time, or Sketches of Living Notables, which you can also see on the Internet Archive. And it's really a list of different men's names, and always men, and a brief biography of them. And so he looked at the notable men and connected them and found that 1 out of 8 men who were listed to be notable had male relatives of similar attainments, and came to this conclusion, along with the publication of his cousin Charles Darwin about traits being inherited, came to the conclusion that everything came from biology. And because these men were in this book, they were notable, and those were the only notable people, and then they were related to other people who had done it, and therefore everyone else has less quality genetic stock. So now, if that research methodology was put through any scrutiny, it would fail. It doesn't consider other aspects of society or of influences on an individual. The ability to read and write was relatively rare in the 1800s. So in the 1800s, there was no school provided until the late 1800s. So according to the University of Delaware, in 1820, just over 60% of men could read, whereas just over 40% of men could read. But it didn't matter to people that the science may have not been great of Galton. You know, the idea of inheritance obviously has been around for thousands of years and has justified kings and monarchies, so this was just a different way to justify it. The idea of it being more kind of scientifically proven. The idea of eugenics really spread, especially in the United States and in Germany, and was pushed. Well, we might say, well, that was 100 years ago or however many years ago. This ideology has lived on. There was a book in 1994 called The Bell Curve, which continued to promote historical eugenic arguments and also promoted disinvestment into social enhancements like education and food and caring about societies. And this one author of the book has passed away, where the other one is still writing and continues to push this ideology. Modern scientists, understanding of genetics that's only a few decades old, and now this is just one study that's out there, but you can search PubMed or Scholar to see other articles that are out there. Article talks about how genetics only influences 30 to 60% of personality. And I didn't even go, if you go into other aspects of medicine, all sorts of studies. And the other factors, are outside factors. So food, attitude, access, environment, and all those factors working together. In truth, your zip code matters more than your genetic code for healthy outcomes. And this has been repeated by different people studying the topic for many years now, just to show that we should invest into things like public space and sidewalks and cleanliness and making people's environment as healthy as possible. And it's really important to not disinvest into our societies and our live space and our community centers and the things that allow people to connect to one another, because that is what helps us lift one another up. We should invest in programs and things that bring people together, that make people's lives better as a whole, increase the quality of education, increase the quality of air, the air we breathe, the food we eat, the water we drink, access through public transportation, and those things make a difference. So if you look at cities that have invested in those things, their populations are better off as a whole. Whereas you look at places that have not invested in those, then their whole community or state go down in the United States. So what do you think about this? Is kind of information helpful to you? So let me know. Thanks for time with me. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from you.